invite you to be seated. We've had the blessing and pleasure of hearing the witness of 3 from our community, and this morning a 4th member of the St. Mark's community will share his words and witness to us. Matt Wright, love to have you share with us. Thank you.
It's all right. I thought I had a challenging assignment taking this on until I heard that Sherry got stuck with the judge's reading this morning. So I feel a lot better. Most of you know I read words for a living. A lot of time they're other people's words. So this is something new and challenging for me too. As I started thinking about this, for some reason this thought flashed into my head of a show that my brother Chris and I used to watch when we were kids. I was about 13 or 14, and there used to be this show on Channel 4 every Saturday night around 6:30. It was called Thrill Seekers. You remember that? And it was hosted by the rifleman Chuck Connors, who would drive into the camera on a dirt bike and he'd skid to a stop and he'd say, "It's been said, it's better to meet danger than to wait for it. In the next 30 minutes, you're going to meet a very special breed of cat. Men who can't wait to meet danger. They chase it, challenge it, and lick it. For the next half hour, the Thrill Seekers." I was so fascinated by this. They had skydivers, they had wire walkers, bungee jumpers, alligator wrestlers, guys who would bet, a fortune, millions of dollars on a single hand of poker, or freeze themselves in a block of ice, or free climb up El Capitan. And I would ask myself, am I going to grow up and be a guy who meets danger and chases it and challenges it and licks it? Even then, I knew if it involved jumping out of a plane or climbing up the side of a mountain, the answer was definitely not. So I'm not a thrill seeker. I'm not a gambler. I'm not reckless, not generally a throw caution to the winds kind of a guy. I'm pragmatic, reasonably prudent, moderately thoughtful. Which means part of me can empathize with the contestant number 3 in today's gospel reading. The slave who buries all that money in the desert figuring, hey, I may not make anybody rich this way, but at least I won't get chewed out or buried in the desert myself. So I've got that going for me. Like him, I too have lived with a would-be master who second guesses my every move. At every major turning point in my life, he's been there questioning, mocking, trying to block my way. The first real decision that carried big life consequences that I ever had to make for myself was when I was invited to leave my very comfortable home as a freshman at Chandler High School and decamp unceremoniously at the end of the year for parts unknown. And most of us who, because the school closed on very short notice, and we were all kind of out in the street, and Poly and Flint Ridge Prep in those days, and for the girls, Westridge and Mayfield Senior, all opened their doors and made us welcome because we had been students at a good school, and most of my guy friends went off to Poly or they went to Prep. And I had to really think about that. I had to really think about where I was going to go and what I was going to do with myself. And my decision, made really on my own, was to go to John Muir High School.
Go Mustangs.
What's that?
Go Mustangs.
Go Mustangs. And at the time I made that, there was still that voice in my head that said, "You idiot! Your parents have sent you to one of the best schools in the area, and now you're going to reward them by going where? You're nuts." So there's that voice in your head that tries to talk you out of those things. And then a little later on, I got through Muir, I went to UCLA, I wanted to be a theater major. And that voice was back again. You're insane. Do you know what the odds are against success? You'll never get into a major. And if you do, you'll never get a job. So I did that. And when I got out of UCLA and I decided the work I really wanted to do was not listed in the job descriptions of any going concern, and that I'd be better off creating my own job and being my own boss, he was back and he chimed in, see, 4 years of school, wasted, unemployable, loser. More recently, I returned to Chandler as a parent and now as a board member. And 5, 6 years ago, we were faced with a really monumental decision for the school about whether to take on millions of dollars in debt and go forward with construction of a new middle school campus. Right in the middle of this downturn, terrible economic downturn, and that voice was back. You'll never make it. You'll be lucky to survive as a school in this economy anyway. You'll be stuck with millions in debt. You'll never pay it off. The school will close, and it's all going to be on you. And giving to others time, money, whatever, don't even get that guy started. Give them a few bucks, he'll tell you. Whatever gets your name in the annual report, they'll be happy to get it. Don't overcommit. You're not responsible for them. They'll sink or they'll swim, and you don't make a difference one way or the other. The poor slave in the parable heard that voice, I'm convinced. We all hear that voice. It's a natural impulse to preserve what we have, not to overcommit, not to find reasons why almost anything won't work, to discount our instincts and play to conventional wisdom. And like the slave, sometimes we don't just hear, we listen, we give in to that voice. The slave thought he heard his master's voice, but it wasn't his true master. It was that would-be master that never stops trying to get us to listen. Fear. Fear is clever. Fear is convincing. But fear is a bully. Fear is sadistic. Fear is cowardly. Fear destroys what you create. Fear wants you to think his way is the only way. But there is another way, and it starts with one simple step. Quit working for fear. All you need to do is remember that you are a person of faith, and faith will liberate you from fear. You can find it in writing in the employee manual. Psalm 27, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? 2 Timothy, for God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Deuteronomy, be strong and of a good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them, for the Lord thy God, he it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. I am grateful to be a person of faith. I believe in a God who loves me and wants me to share my gifts with the world. But God does not want less than the best I can give. So I believe God helps me to step into my own great unknowns, to find challenge and joy and purpose and fulfillment. Throughout my life, God has helped me turn away from fear, to reject the bluster that makes me want to second guess, follow convention, keeps me from jumping in with both feet, forces me to look for the escape hatch before I start the journey, and tells me to quit at the first sign of trouble. As I said, I went to Newton, and they were the best 3 years of school I ever spent. I learned everything about the world at that place. I learned who people are, how great people can be. I learned to understand people at their best and at their worst. My whole worldview was shaped by those 3 years, and I've used what I got from that experience every day of my life since. And I could have been talked out of it. I majored in theater at UCLA despite everybody's advice, and it was not indeed easy to get into the major. It was quite a story. And there was no job waiting with a major corporation. But it was the path I felt I had to follow, and I didn't let fear talk me out of it. I started a company right out of college. Now people would call it a startup, and I'd be really cool. But in the corporate 80s, people thought I was an idiot. And to be honest, there were a few times when I thought probably they're right. But for me, it was the way forward, and I didn't let fear overcome me ultimately. And in March, we will celebrate our 30th anniversary as a going concern. At Chandler, we made the difficult decision to go ahead and build that new campus. When other very capable people told us we were foolish to do it, we understood their reluctance, but we also saw the need and believed thoroughly in our mission, and we did not fear the outcome. We had faith that our decision would be the right one. And it was. Times were tough, as we all know, but money was cheap, and labor was plentiful, and the community was behind us. They were motivated, and our faith was rewarded with a flourishing capital campaign and a school that now has facilities to match the quality of its program, and we've had capacity enrollment every year since we completed that building. Taking it away from me and adding a member of my family in all of this and coming a little bit closer to home here to St. Mark's. When Colville asked Mary Ann to step in as senior warden ahead of his retirement, I have to say, no one felt less qualified to do it than Mary Ann did. And yet, because she felt God's hand there to guide her, she did not fear that challenge. She didn't know that she would be in the hot seat all those years, and she didn't know that all the challenges that lay ahead were there waiting, but she did it. And our church community has every reason to be grateful that Mary Ann rejected fear and stepped forward in faith. And look where we are now, St. Mark's. Take a look around you and see what this parish has accomplished by turning away from fear and stepping forward in faith. We have a vibrant, growing community of people who have found their spiritual home here. We've identified and funded ministries that serve God and enrich lives from Altadena to Port-au-Prince, Haiti. We have more people involved more deeply in more aspects of church life than at any time I can remember since we came here in 2003. We are leaning into challenges. We are not shrinking from them. We all face challenges that force us to decide whether to step up or step back. We all keep that internal ledger of triumphs and regrets. But as a great singer once sang, regrets, I've had a few. But God has taught me to ask these questions. Who will face these challenges if I don't? What can I contribute to my family, my friends, and my community besides lip service? How can I ask others to help with their time, talent, and treasure if I haven't given as much of those things as I can? No matter what fear tells you, there is always time enough, and there are always resources enough. And I think we prove that at St. Mark's every day. Deep down, as we all know, and I suspect that slave knew, the fear inside us will betray us. Fear doesn't care for others. Fear is not a builder. Fear is not compassionate. Fear is not a comfort. Ultimately, fear doesn't make the world a better place. Faith does. When I reflect on this parable, I think of it as a referendum on fear. Who knows what happened to the other two slaves after this episode? What kind of responsibilities did they get? Was their judgment infallible? Did they always get it right? Was life a bed of roses for those guys ever after? Probably not. But at least they took a step forward, and probably many more. And who knows how much of their world they changed by reaching out for something better, by making the attempt, and by stepping forward in faith. I said before that I'm not a thrill seeker, but thrill seekers and I do have something in common. Thrill seekers can't do what they do without stepping, climbing, diving, or jumping forward in faith, and neither can any of us. Besides, if you walk forward on God's path, you never have to be a thrill seeker. The thrills will seek you. Amen.